Executive Director of the Sweetwater County Historical Museum. And with me here today is Dominic Wolf, the Mayor of Superior, Wyoming, the living ghost town. And on the other side of me is Frank Prevedel, born and raised in Superior, or is it Upper Superior or Lower Superior? Or
I was born in Superior and I was raised in South Superior, and
Superior.
That's where we are now.
Which is where we are now.
But it's Superior now, because there's no Superior left.
And Frank graduated from high school here in Superior, ended up going to the University of Wyoming, got his degree in education, became a teacher, administrator in the school district in Rock Springs and in Sweetwater County, and eventually a senator in the Wyoming State Legislature. And he's done a million other things that he'll have to tell you more about. We are here in the little museum in the living ghost town of Superior. Some of the exhibits here actually were installed by the Sweetwater County Historical Museum, but a lot of these are from the residents of Superior. You probably have a few artifacts in here, don't you?
Yes.
So anyway, with that, Frank?
Well, I was born in Superior on Sea Hill, and Sea Hill named after the sea mine, Union Pacific Sea Mine in Superior. And then I was raised in South Superior because my dad built a house here, and went to elementary school up here on the hill. It's called the White City Elementary School. This part of the main street at this end is called White City because when the prospectors were here in 1902 and 03, they lived in white tents. So it was called White City and it remained. So I graduated from high school way back in 1950. Went to the university, went to the Army, everything you do, and then I came back to Rock Springs and had a chance to put a book together about Superior. I mean, I love this place. I grew up here. It was a very prosperous and a fairly large community when I was here. I was privileged several years ago to put together a book about Superior and South Superior in the Images of America series. And I suppose that I have over-covered Superior, but anyway, here goes. My first picture is a picture of the Natural Corrals, which is a recreation area north of Superior, about 4 or 5 miles. It's on the record, the National Historical Record. I have a picture here of the D.O. Clark tipple. The tipple brought the coal up from the underground. It was the largest producer in the Union Pacific system. Started in 39, and the bragging from the UP was, this one will never be closed. It'll furnish coal till the 21st century. Well, it closed in 1963. One of the early mines that's here is the B mine. It's one of the very early mines. It was located just above South Superior and was one of the big early producers. The Copenhagen mine is next, and it's on fire in the 1930s. The tipple was on fire. It was rebuilt and produced until the 60s. I have here a picture of Ed Overy and an unnamed miner drilling some holes and setting some powder in the face of the coal, and you can see how rich the coal was in this area. Roy Epps, next picture. Roy Epps was a motorman, and we called him Paddlefoot. He had big feet, and he paddled. He was fast. He came out of the mine with this motor, and then he ran to the bathhouse. He was like lightning. And I have his initials in the mine, December 3rd, 1942. That's the D.O. Clark mine. Here is a picture that's mine that I'm really proud of. It's the steam engine that came down the canyon and stopped on Friday afternoons to watch Superior High School football games. The tracks were just on the other side of the field. So anyway, he'd watch the games, and when it was over, he'd honk a little if Superior did well. I have a picture here of the Superior Coal Company store. In 1916, the Superior Coal Company merged with the Union Pacific Coal Company. It became thereafter the UP store. It was the company store. One of the recreation items in Superior, and mostly South Superior, was the making of moonshine. Every year, the Union Mercantile store brought in boxcars of grapes from California. Now, these are boxcars of grapes. People would come and buy tons of grapes. And then moonshine was made before, during, and after Prohibition. Barkeep told me there was no change. Anyway, one of the stills blew up, and I have a picture here, and it blew up and knocked over and destroyed the Golden Rule store in Superior. And here is a still, a little modern because it's converted to gas, and used to be you just had it on a coal stove and you brewed the grapes to make moonshine. One of the keen stores in Superior was the Working Men's Commercial Company. The Working Men's Commercial Company was a Finnish co-op with stores in Rock Springs, South Superior, and Elmo. It just was a great store. It did not have meat, but it had all the other groceries and dry goods. Here is a picture of the center of the town of Superior, and it's not much of a center because it's spread out all over, but the clubhouse is here on the left, St. Vivian Church on the extreme right. Straight ahead is the Union Pacific Coal Company store, and in the background on the hill you can see the Superior High School and gym. All of that, except St. Vivian's Church, is gone. The South Superior Union Hall, which is on the National Register of Historic Places, I had a hand in saving that Union Hall because I asked the abandoned mineland people if they could save the facade, which is unique, and they did. They took down the back walls, which were becoming unstable, but they saved it, and it's now a visitor center with plaques in there giving little history of the area. Next to it is the Finn Hall. The biggest ethnic group in Superior was the Finn Hall, and they led the fight for socialist votes. And in 2 presidential elections, Superior led the state in votes for the socialist candidate. As you can see in this next slide, the South Superior Main Street was a busy place. And this was in the late 40s, so the real peak of the business was already gone. But it was busy. Today. You don't see cars there much. And here, going back to Finns, is a group of young Finnish miners having their picture taken on the porch of a Finnish boarding house. Here, Gus Thomas is completing his Acropolis candy store. The Acropolis candy store was featured in a display about Rock Springs at Ellis Island in New York. And I said to the guy there, I said, this isn't Rock Springs, this is Superior. And it says Acropolis Candy Store. And he says, I didn't think Superior was big enough for a candy store. And I said, it isn't, but it's big enough for a gambling hall. Here's one of the lodges. This is the Tyrolean Fratellanza. There was no government help in those days for widows, for injuries, for hospitalizations, for funerals. And so the different ethnic groups, the Finn Hall for one, the Tyrolean group, formed their own. And here we have the officers of the Tyrolean group. An Italian immigrant built what we called the castle. He quarried the stone, he built the thing, and above the window at the top is the engraving V.E., 1916. Victor Emmanuel was the King of Italy in 1916. And here we have what we refer to and what the book refers to is Japtown. In those days, the Asians were kept apart. And part of that was because of the difficulty with the Chinese, I suppose. Now, Superior had no Chinese. But here's Japtown, was set aside from the rest of Superior. Here we have a class, Americanization class, where students learned to speak English and where they learned to pass tests for their citizenship. And so it was highly successful. It was very well attended. And it's interesting to note that people all had suits and ties on. They really dressed nicely for this class. Class of 1941, and I placed it here because I wanted to show how big the high school was at that time. There is no high school anymore. It's gone because there was no enrollment anymore. But in 1941, before the war, actually, but when the gearing up for the war, this class had something like 65 students in it, and that made it a fairly good-sized school. Here we have been standing in front of the Finn Hall, 4 high school students who were majorettes for the Union Pacific Band. Union Pacific Band was adults and students sponsored by the coal company, followed by the South Superior Drum and Bugle Corps. And it's standing in front of the steps of the Wyoming State Capitol. It won first place in some competition there. Here's the South Superior Concert Band. Amazing to me because the South Superior and Superior each had a junior high in the early years. Here's the dedication of War Monument after the Second World War. You'll see soldiers all lined up there, and in the background some apartment houses that no longer exist. The plaque on the monument honors those who died in the First World War and the Second World War. South Superior Fire Department had this slick truck that they hauled all over. It wasn't very successful putting out fires, but they were successful in parades. This one is a parade, and it's coming down the hill in front of the Opera House. The Opera House was a building that was big, had a lot of activities in it, and it burned to the ground in 1952. One of the highlights of the year for all the coal camps in the area, including Rock Springs, Reliance, Hanna, Winton, was the annual contest for first aid. And each of the mine seams had a team, and the schools had a team, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts had teams, and the Union Pacific gave really great prizes for the winners. And the next one is a Girl Scout troop. The Girl Scout team won first place in their category in this particular picture. And the D.O. Clark Mine won first place, and here they are. And I've got them identified here at the bottom of this picture, but here they are with their huge trophy. The Department of the Interior every year gave awards for safety, and those that had the most hours worked without a lost time accident would receive the Sentinel of Safety trophy. And the Superior Mines, year after year, won a few, and here's a picture of it. One of the great stories about Superior is their adult baseball team. Again, this was fostered by the coal company, and they had teams in all the coal places. This one, you'll notice that even though they have an S for Superior on the uniform, they have New York on the baseball caps because they bought the used uniforms of the New York Yankees. And several years ago, I had a call from the New York Yankees Museum for their new stadium, asked if I had any paraphernalia of that baseball team, and I couldn't locate any. But I did send them this picture, and they called back and said, when you come to New York, you'll see this picture on display in our museum. One thing that Superior had that nobody else had in the area was a swimming pool, and here you see some guy really doing a fancy dive into the pool, with kids around watching. And the thing that's interesting about this is that across the way you see a portion of all the houses on B Hill, which was a UP housing area, and not anything exists over there anymore. When the mines began to close, the Union Pacific began to sell its newer houses, and they'd be on trucks and leaving town. And if a person had a home in South Superior that they wanted to save, they moved to Rock Springs. And here's one that is being moved out of Superior. It's going over the overpass in Rock Springs, and it's still here in Rock Springs. The Union Pacific, when it closed the mines, brought all the equipment out of the mine and scattered it across the canyon. So these two pictures show the motors, big motors that must have cost a fortune, being scrapped. And the next one, the coal cars, the little yellow coal cars that brought coal to the big belt that came up from the mine into the tipple. And those were all sold for scrap. The Superior Cemetery, called the Mountain View Cemetery, has many graves and headstones, but it was abandoned in 1928, and so most of the monuments that were sandstone are eroded away, and if they were wood, of course, they were eroded long since. But apparently since the mid-90s, people have been burying up there again. Here's a new home in Superior, and you can see behind it a slag heap from the Copenhagen mine. And it is kind of a renaissance up there, especially when they first built the power plant, because you had a lot of people that put new modular homes in Superior. Nothing's been done since, but it really stopped the total decline. Here's another one, and you will see above this house the Superior High School S. The town has put in near the cemetery, right next door to the cemetery, what they call a Superior Memorial Garden. And if you had people that lived in Superior, you could go have a small stone made, and there was a man in Superior that had a shop, and he made them. So there's quite a few people that have done that to commemorate their parents or whoever who lived there. Superior Memorial Garden. I took a picture of the main street in Superior, and I've sent this around not because of the main street, but because there's trees. I had a note the other day, an email from a guy who's not coming to the Superior reunion because he's too old, and so he said, but as I remember Superior, there was no greenery. So I sent him a picture of this picture, and he wrote back and said, wow. I've been gone a long time. The Union Hall was kind of the center of activities now that it's restored. And here's a welcome sign to a Superior reunion, which it draws hundreds every year. Now this year the committee is putting it together again, and they've already got 150 yeses. And the high school closed in 1963. So it's amazing. People always told us we were clannish, and somebody called it a cult. And I said, I think we are. And finally here, I have my dad's initials in the D.O. Clark mine. He was in charge of closing the mine, and this signature of his was done in 1962. End of a very, very prosperous community.
I'd like to thank Frank Prevedel for coming here and actually giving me a history lesson since I've been mayor the past 4 years. I've learned a lot about a town that I grew up in, and this was actually my first grade classroom, so it's kind of an honor to be sitting in the first grade classroom and as well in my principal's office as the mayor. And I'd like to thank Sweetwater County Museum for everything to the museum. And I want everybody to go ahead and watch the YouTube video that's being presented, and hopefully it gets out there and we can make this a bigger retirement, good community.